Welcome, welcome, welcome. As I was saying, this is 7A, Our Girls, Our Community. I'm sorry, let me get the full title here. Our Girls, Our Community, the experience of Black girls and adolescents in foster care. Our presenter today is Ms. Jamerika Haynes Lewis, a native of Tacoma, Washington. Jamerika Haynes Lewis has more than 10 years experience as a journalist and advocate for children in foster care. Jamerika grew up in foster care and put herself through college, earning a Bachelor's of Arts in Communication from Washington State University. Recently, she was hired as the Event Communications Specialist for Plymouth Housing in Seattle, Washington. As the owner of Clever Jam Communications, I always want to use my DJ voice. Clever Jam Communications, you can find at www.cleverjam.com. Jamerika offers strategic communications guidance, motivational speaking, and facilitation. Currently, she is Ms. Evergreen State 2020 through the USA Ambassador Pageant. Her platform is a chance to succeed, empowering youth in foster care. Without further ado, I turn it over to Ms. Jamerika Haynes Lewis.
Hi, thank you for that, Chester. Good morning, everyone. I am tuning in from Seattle. It is nice and cloudy today. I hope the weather is better in New York or wherever you are tuning in from. So today, I'll be talking about, obviously, the experience of Black girls and adolescents in foster care. I'll be sharing some statistics and facts, as well as sharing some of my own personal experience. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my PowerPoint here. Here we go, share screen, and we'll get this going. All right, so welcome. That's a picture of me when I was 8 years old. A couple of people ask about it. My foster mom had actually took my siblings and I on a cross-country trip, which included going to Disneyland, to the nation's capital in DC. And so this was taken when we were on the Greyhound bus. My foster mom had a fear of flying, and so that was the only way she would go anywhere long distance. And so lots of good memories and fun. And so, yes, I'm from the Northwest. I was born and raised here. Washington State doesn't have a very high population of African Americans, but for those of us who are here, a lot of us are brought here because of the military. So my maternal family, they came here by way of Detroit, Michigan, and that's why I'm here in Washington State. They decided to stay after my grandmother's spouse finished his time in the military. I studied communication at Washington State University. I did everything from being a print news reporter to doing broadcasting and production. And till this day, I use a lot of that skill set in my current work, including what I'm doing now. When I finished college, I was a freelance reporter for the Press Enterprise, which is a top daily 100 newspaper here in the United States. And I was responsible for community news. And when I was in college, I decided I wanted to be a motivational speaker. I wasn't sure what I would quite speak about yet, even though that's what I speak about now. But that led me to creating Clever Jam Communications, which could house that, as well as being able to do facilitation like the workshop I'm doing today. And some of that also includes some strategic guidance work as well. And as was mentioned, I'm Ms. Evergreen State. USA Ambassador 2020, and my platform is A Chance to Succeed, Empowering Youth in Foster Care. I was a foster child, and I spent 13 years of my life in the child welfare system here in Washington State. And so that was a very profound experience that very much shaped who I was, but it also left me wanting to help other children and families who are navigating the system. And so that's why I chose that as my platform in pageantry. So today, what we can expect to learn is how to confront stereotypes when working with children and families. I think, unfortunately, we can all fall victim to the biases we have, as well as just not having the education to build a connection with people who are different than us. So really just how do we bridge that gap and minimize the barriers to building relationships with our clients? Also, too, I'll be talking about some of the needs and challenges facing Black girls and adolescents. I think all adolescents and children have a lot of things in common when it comes to their development. But I think when you have a cultural piece to it, especially during a young person's formative years, it's really important to acknowledge that and to see the challenges that can be involved. And then overall, right, we're here to help children thrive in foster care in our respective roles. And I think that is very much possible. And as I go to the next slide, I love to learn where y'all are from. What do you hope to learn today? And any questions or concerns you may have. And so it looks like we have a pretty big group. So I would love it if y'all can just drop in the chat, what do you hope to learn today, where you're from, any questions or concerns you may have. And Chester, if you could help me for anything that comes through the chat, if you can read those to me,
Okay.
I would appreciate that because I can't see it when I'm sharing my screen.
Okay. You mean as they pop up or just periodic?
Yeah, as they pop up.
Okay.
Because I asked the group to
Gotcha.
share.
Well, we got Brooklyn, Massachusetts, Long Island. I love hearing real life experiences, more Brooklyn, more Massachusetts. Who else we got out there? Near Ithaca, New York. Would love to know how to better support our African-American daughters.
Okay. Cool.
Would love to learn your experience. Chile, New York. Who else we got? Keep it coming, folks. What else you got? Well, I'm an adoptive parent and an adoptee. We have a pediatrician in Newburgh, New York, work a lot with teens in group homes.
Okay.
Queens, New York, is represented. I was born and raised in New York, but I am currently live in Pittsburgh, PA.
Okay.
Just my own personal information. And I want to learn more about the unique struggles that face our Black girls in care, especially with all of the pressures from society in general. From Queens, New York, we have another representative. We also have from Lima, New York, Lima, hoping to learn some proactive ideas for assisting our two adopted biracial daughters.
Okay.
Ithaca, New York, foster parent, author, provide trainings to foster and adopted parents.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Yeah. Very talkative today. I like it. I really like it.
Interactive.
Those folks. That's awesome. Yep.
Okay. It's quiet now.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Yes. So I'll try I should be able to touch on all of the above, but at the end, I'm going to leave some time for question and answers. And if you feel like I didn't answer something you were hoping I would, that will also be another time to ask. So I really want to make sure I cover what y'all want to know. So thank y'all so much. All right. So we have some general foster care stats. Obviously, children who come into care, right, can't be with their families. The family may be going through a time of crisis, and children come into care for a number of reasons. I came into foster care because my parent, who was my mother, was struggling with some mental health issues as well as some substance abuse. And there had been a number of crises that had happened in our home that just caused our predicament to just become worse over time. So we were removed. And I always like to say that foster care isn't the first option, nor should it be. And so I know that there's been a lot of work done in recent years to provide services to family who do find themselves in crisis, so children don't have to go into care. Because really and truly, that should be like the absolute last option, right? And so on any given day, there's a little under 500,000 children in the system, which isn't that high of a number when you think of how many children live in the system. But obviously, it is problematic if we have families that aren't able to thrive. And then obviously to the cost to have children in the system, and also to the long-term consequences where families aren't being able to be stabilized. So I always like to point out that figure is, not a huge number when we think of how many people live in the States, but the social costs are great if families aren't supported. Obviously, for children going through care, they have experienced trauma. It can be very traumatizing for a child to be separated from their family of origin. Also to the situations some children are in are very traumatizing, right? To be abused, to be neglected. I know that something my siblings and I experienced was severe neglect. I had developmental delays. I was socially underdeveloped. And so I thank God for the speech pathologist and teachers and other people in my life who helped me over the course of my childhood and even when I became an adult, because, I had the effects of just some of the situations I had been through. So that might be the case too with some of the children in your care where, they just need a little bit more love and support, and I really do feel that kids can thrive. They just need that support from the adults in their life. And as I'm going through, feel free to drop in questions if you feel like, oh, I don't get that, or I'd like to know more. Other than that, you can ask them as I go along or at the end. For Black girls in foster care, they make up 23% of the population in foster care. I wasn't able to find any statistics on how many Black girls specifically are in foster care, but I know Black youth make up 23% of the children in foster care. And that is a bit problematic because overall, Black children make up 14% of the United States population for children. However, there is that disproportionality factor in foster care. And there are a number of reasons, right? Black people, when they are living in poverty, it tends to be worse for them because they may not have additional family support. Obviously, the income isn't sufficient enough to take care of their kids. So that makes them more vulnerable to be entered into the system if they do come onto the radar of CPS. I'm not sure what it's called there in the East Coast, but here we call it Child Protective Services in Washington State. Another reason too, which is an unfortunate one, is bias and cultural misunderstanding, right? Sometimes people may not understand how Black people may raise their kids. And so there can be a lot of misunderstandings and people thinking, well, oh, well, that seems abusive or that doesn't seem right. So we're dealing with that bias. And I would say that's a couple of reasons that may cause disproportionality. And there is work being done to help eliminate that. I served on the disproportionality task force here in my state. And so that was really great to be a part of to try to help remedy that issue. And some of these facts that I'm talking about are applicable to girls who aren't of color. I just want everyone to be aware of that. They are more likely to be removed from their home because of sexual abuse. That is the case for girls. Girls tend to respond to trauma by internalizing it. So you might see a lot of anxiety or depression. I know that was something that I suffered from, and not wanting to be social and are withdrawn. But you may also see times where girls may act out, right? Which is also known as externalizing. So they may, act out. They may be very loud and aggressive. My younger sister was that, just very explosive anger, very hyperactive. I was the complete opposite, very stoic, withdrawn. I was like, give me 50 feet, don't come near me. So, that's who I was at times. And then obviously, as I explained before, going through poverty affects a child socially, emotionally, cognitively, and those things can be exacerbated if they're not able to access education and healthcare properly. And that's due to a parent who isn't present and involved, is failing to meet those duties of getting their children to school and making sure that they're getting to the doctor. Chester, I saw a few questions come through. Do you want to let me know what those are about?
Certainly. We had one that was Rochester, New York, they were reporting, and I'm paraphrasing now, hope to get some support around helping our children develop healthy identities. That was one. And one was just me adding about the fundraiser. And one is the executive director of an agency in Rochester, New York, adoptive parent, children of color, hope to assist our interracial families to maintain their children's heritage and to provide our young women with confidence to successfully navigate life.
All right. Yeah, y'all are giving me a chance.
Making you work.
Okay. I'm here for it. Yes, I can definitely talk about those things as we go along. Thank y'all. All right. So our next slide is unique needs of Black girls in care, right? And really and truly, these needs are something we all have as well as our children have. So with emotional, when we talk about Black girls specifically, right, we want our girls to have a good self-esteem. And that comes from being affirmed. That also comes from being able to see other people that look like you that are portrayed positively, right? And not just seeing people with positive attributes, right, like people who are kind and nice, but also seeing people embrace other people that look like these children, right? And media is a great way, right? If you're able to watch a show where a lead character is Black, right, and they're not just positive but they're a complex character, right, you get to see their inner emotional life. And so being able to see that not just through media but in real life, that really gives children an example to know, oh, wow, this is what it means to be a person who looks like me, right? And so I think that modeling is really great. And like I said, being able to get to know that child and reflect back to them who they are allows them to see themselves as a unique individual, right? That is different than other people. But also, too, it shows them that they are the same, right? Because especially with girls, they know that they're loved, they know that they're seen, and that really helps to increase their self esteem. And also, too, that recognition is really important. One thing my foster mom used to do was she would put our hair in barbers and barrettes, right? Kind of like what you see here in this picture with the two little girls. And I knew my hair was different than my classmates, but because my foster mom spent that time doing my hair and making my, kinky curly hair look really pretty, that made me feel really special, especially on picture day,
Yeah.
and so those are just some of the things we can do to help recognize the uniqueness of our kids' identity, as well as helping to make sure they have good self-esteem. And then with cultural, right, like learning who you are, what makes you different. And for me, I really appreciated the adults in my life who would teach us Black history, right? And it went beyond what was seen on TV or the slave narrative. I'm talking about going back to the continent of Africa, right? And it is a part of our history, right? When Black people were enslaved, but understanding why they were enslaved and the legacy of that, institution of slavery, right? Where we're dealing with systemic racism, where we're still dealing with the fact that 1 in 4 Black people live in poverty, right? And that has its roots in when Black people were enslaved and they didn't have access to property or wealth. So just learning history in a much more complex and a much more deeper way, I think really helps Black kids to really understand who they are and what their people have gone through as a collective. And then traditions, right? I've had a couple of friends who are African American who have gotten married and they'll jump the broom. And that's something that enslaved Black people used to do. They would jump the broom as a sign of marriage because they weren't, again, legally able to participate in that. And so those are just some of the traditions that, we learn about in our culture. And then social, identity, being recognized and seen as a Black person. As I mentioned, growing up in Washington State, like our population of Black people is no more than 3% in the entire state, right? And so I loved my classmates and I loved my friends. And, but at times I felt like they didn't see my Blackness, right? And then other times people would see it, but like sometimes I felt like I didn't know like in group Black people things because for a lot of my childhood, I was the only Black child in school and one of few in my community. And so at times it was just like, well, I know I'm Black, right? But not having it like affirmed publicly all the time, it was hard because it was just like sometimes I felt like I had to hide that away or it wasn't a big deal. And then relationships, like I said, making sure that girls and even just youth overall are in relationships that are healthy, that recognize them for who they are, and most importantly, where they feel like they can be themselves. Chester, any new comments or questions?
No, I don't think so. Let me take a quick look. Nope, I don't think so. Not yet.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mhm.
And so, with the benefits of having needs met, right? I talked about that identity piece, and I know a couple of you had questions about that. When we are able to meet those needs, children and young people, they're self accepting, right? They feel confident because they know who they are and they're accepted for who they are. And so being able to have that self-acceptance and confidence, motivates us to seek out confidence, right? To put ourselves out there to develop a skill. Because that's really hard to do if you don't feel good about yourself or if you don't know who you are. It's really hard to go out there and develop those skill sets. But when you have those things intact and when they are healthy, you are able to go out and develop those skills, and that increases your confidence as well as one's interdependence, right? Because none of us does anything by ourselves, right? For anything to be a success, it takes everyone. So feeling confident as well as feeling confident allows us to want to work with others, right? And to feel as though we have something to contribute, as well as being able to accept help from others through trust, right? And that's something you might notice is that for some foster youth, they don't want to trust anyone. I know I was like that way. It was, I'll just handle it myself. I don't need anyone. It takes too long. It's too much. I don't want to get burnt. But the thing about it is that hyper independence isn't a healthy thing. And sometimes I think adults and professionals want to just, back up and go, well, we'll just let them do it, or they seem to have it. But it's important that, people aren't codependent either, right? Where they're always asking for help or they're looking for someone to solve their problems. So that happy medium is interdependence.
Mhm.
And then also, too, after all of these are met, a young person is going to feel naturally motivated, right? Because they know how to work with people. They feel good about their skill set, they're confident in who they are, and they're self accepting. And so motivation is a natural result of that.
Can I ask you to just step back 1 second? You were talking about when your foster parent did your hair for you and how
Yes,
important that was. And
yes.
I'd like you to speak to the benefits, if you believe there are any, of actually a foster parent or adoptive parent taking the time to make sure that your hair looks pretty. How
Yes.
does that impact you as a young girl?
Yeah. Oh, 1000%. Like I mentioned, my first foster mom, that it was a ritual because, there was more than one of us. And so she spent the whole Saturday doing our hair, and it was a great bonding time. I think that's what I really liked, was being able to sit Saturday nights and have her hair washed and dried and pressed, and being able to talk to my foster mom. Oftentimes there was, between 4 to 6 children in the home. And so we weren't able to have a ton of one-on-one time with her. And it's aesthetically, it made me feel good. It made me proud to be Black. It got a little wonky, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, when I became a teen and I didn't have a parent to do my hair, and I was expected to do my own hair, and I didn't know how. I didn't have money to go get my hair done. I would try to go find stylists, but I felt like they were judgmental, and that was really intimidating, and I didn't know how to look for someone, nor did I have the money. So it was hard because people did make fun of me. Um, they wouldn't help me. And so it wasn't until I got into my mid 20s where I was able to find a stylist who was respectful towards me, who wasn't just trying to take my money,
Mm-hmm.
and have me look crazy. And so it's really important. It's beneficial for self esteem, but also, like I said, too, an opportunity to get to know that young person, bond with them, and also just figure out what's going on in their life.
A question just popped up. Did you ever have a Black foster parent?
Yes, all my foster parents were Black. The only exception was when I was in a crisis residential center as a teen, and the staff was, different ethnicities.
Mhm. One other question. My supervisor and I were just discussing this. There is no place for our foster moms to go to learn how to do hair. There is also no budget for hair products. I would be able to, oh, how would I be able to change this?
I would start off by seeing if there's any foster parent networks. If any of those foster parent networks have like a Black family, like Black foster family network. Sometimes, these organizations will have little groups. Sometimes they're separate. So you could try to see if there's a foster parent group or Black foster parent group that you could work with. Also, too, on the East Coast, I don't know if they have, I'm presuming they do. I know there's a Black social worker network, like, group. You could try reaching out to them and seeing what resources they could connect you with. um, I would ask your social worker as well. As far as a budget, I would advocate. You're going to have to advocate if there's absolutely no programs, because hair health isn't just an aesthetic or vanity thing. It's actually a health thing, right? I know for me, when I was having trouble taking care of my hair, it was breaking off and it was affecting my scalp. And when that starts to help happen, you're starting to deal with dermatology issues. So that is a healthcare issue. And that's the angle I would advocate from it. There needs to be a budget because you're caring for these children. I'm sorry, I get very passionate about that. Um, so they need to find some money, however they need to find it, so that they can make sure those children are cared for in the way they deserve to be.
A couple of big things came up along those lines. One person said, yes, great idea. And I'm open to teaching and doing hair in Lower Westchester County. Someone else pointed out, we talked about going to our administration about this. Yes, they were agreeing 100%. And one more thing, our white friends raising a biracial daughter had said that she is currently identifying as white. I sent her a subscription to Coco magazine for girls 7 to 11 to expose her to more Black beauty. What are some other tools that you would suggest?
Well, it's hard, and it sounds like the parent of the biracial child is a friend that's not their child. So I would be supportive. I know it's probably uncomfortable to see that, but it is typical for children to identify with the ethnicity of the parents they spend the most amount of time with. So that isn't out of character of the way, but I can see the concern, especially if that child becomes an adult and they go out into the world. So I would just be supportive and be affirmative. I would suggest that you suggest to that parent, they go and they spend time with African Americans in an organic environment, being able to buy Black toys and games and dolls. If there's any kind of camp she can go to that are um, proactive about celebrating Blackness and really just showing kids that it's okay to be Black and that it's not a bad thing. I think that's really important. And I think a great way to do that is to teach history and to uh, just show everyday life of Black people, not just what's on the TV. So I think it's important to be affirmative and just exposure to those experiences.
Some information was shared by Jane Fitzgibbon. Currently, hair products and other hygiene products are supposed to be covered in stipend.
Yes.
Clothing allowance cannot be used to purchase them.
Okay. Yeah. Some of the challenges Black girls face while in care, and it sounds like I've covered some of this, is a lack of positive role models, right? Sometimes they don't have any role models. And so, like I said, the default is, those who are in their environment. I know that for me, I never looked at myself as white, but it was just kind of more, I looked at myself at times as kind of just neutral. Like I knew appearance wise and like on the census box, I was Black, but it was just like, oh, I'm Jamerika, right? And it wasn't until I became an adult and moved to the Black neighborhood in Seattle, which isn't Black anymore because of gentrification. But anywho, uh, the thing about it was seeing Black people every day in and day out, and the struggles they go through, their inner emotional lives. Because unfortunately, I was around adults who felt like, oh well, you don't want to be around too much Blackness or else it's negative, right? Where unfortunately they thought that white was right. You know what I mean? And so now that I'm an adult, it's like, okay, I get what people were trying to say to me when they were kind of confused, like, does she know she's Black, right? And it's not that people, and it's really weird, right? When you're dealing with kind of those in-group dynamics, where I think where it comes from is people have gone through real life struggles where they have been discriminated against, right? Where they haven't been given that emotional support. And so people expect Black youth to know of the history of what's going on and what's happening today, right? Because safety is important. There are unfortunately people who do commit hate crimes against Black people and who do harass people because they're Black. And so what I've learned to see that is people who are just trying to look out for you, but also to people who want the youth to be proud of who they are. Right. And then I mentioned access to resources, being able to have money to go and get your hair done, as well as having the skill set on how to do your hair. Also, too, social isolation. Like I talked about, some Black people who I thought I was white and I felt I wasn't included with them. And then there were times where I would go try to hang out with the white kids and I was too black just by virtue of being black. So, at times I felt like I just couldn't win. And then obviously I touched on the discrimination piece and then the maladaptive coping mechanisms, right? Where I talked about, being very withdrawn, right? You can't get your needs met, or, the externalizing and aggressive behavior where it makes it hard for others to connect. And unfortunately, sometimes young people can end up being, left to fend for themselves because of how they present, which isn't who they are. And so I wanted to touch on a little bit about why this is problematic, right? When girls present those maladaptive coping behaviors, right? The Pew Research Center did a study on how Americans view certain traits in men and women. And it was found that in men, the traits that were valued were being strong and independent. And for women, the traits that were valued were being caring, accommodating, flexible, right? And the issue that girls in care face is when they're not those typical standard gender norms, where they are having to be strong, right? Maybe they had to take care of their siblings, very independent. No one was looking out for them, right? If they're presented in a way that isn't ladylike, sometimes people may tune them out. And that's really not good for our girls because they need that connection, right? And we shouldn't um, look down or turn off if a young girl or woman is presented in a way that we may not consider ladylike because she may have had to do that to survive. So I think it's really important to really be mindful of when we see these behaviors and realize they're not trying to be sassy, they're not trying to be grown, but in fact, they may have had to advocate for themselves, right? They may have been burned when they did trust someone. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind as we're building relationships. Chester, any other questions or anything?
There was an affirmation of hair products can get extremely expensive, especially if a Black girl is trying to find the right product for her curl pattern. And another one was there is a set rate, but I feel like there should be extra for hair products in that kind.
Yes, yes. And the thing about hair products, by no means am I a licensed cosmetologist, but I would say there are certain ingredients. I would consult with the hairstylist about what products to buy because it can get expensive if you're trying to buy all these different products and they don't work. I know for myself that I try to buy stuff that's paraben free, that I do spend a bit money on products because I want good quality products, but I know good quality products, um, they shouldn't have a ton of like mineral oil in them. Like I said, I'm not a cosmetologist, but that's what I look for are things that are paraben free, that don't have a lot of fillers in it to make the product, but are going to really help with that hair health. And also too, the reason why I suggest working with the stylist is that like anyone else, Black youth have different hair textures, right? So you might not want to use like gel on someone with me who has like kinky curly hair because it would dry my hair off and break it. So I would need something that has like an oil based, or I'd have to do like a hairspray or something. So it's just good to do some research. That way you don't end up spending more money on products than you would. And some of the consequences from a lack of support, obviously, lowered self-esteem, poor health, growing up, when I was trying to figure out who I was, I know that I would look to the big kids in the neighborhood or adults I felt had it together when in fact they didn't. And it turned out that they were a negative influence. Low achievement, like if someone doesn't know who they are, if they don't really have a value system or know what they want to do with their life, they're going to be less likely to put themselves out there and try to make a go at life. And that can obviously impact their life skill development and then early parenthood, right? And I bring that up because, especially for girls, if they don't feel they get that love or that recognition, sometimes, the idea of having a baby is a really good idea, right? Because you have an instant family, you have someone who depends on you and who loves you, and people recognize you now as a mom. And so it can be a okay idea for some girls when in fact, the harsh reality is if you're a single parent with no support, no way to support yourself, it can be very, very hard. And that was something I saw in some of my friends and family members who did become teen moms. And I didn't want to be a teen mom. And so I did everything I could to keep myself safe because I knew it was a really hard struggle. even in spite of what the media portrays.
Mhm. There
Chester,
were a couple, yes, there were a couple. One is, I'm sorry, did I?
Oh, I said, I think I saw a question come
Yes,
through.
yes, there were a couple, I'm sorry. The first one was a comment. It's not expensive to get some hair grease and bobos and from a beauty supply store was one part. And there was a question, how did it feel for you to be such a public figure going through your journey? Did you get any pushback from for being Black and or for sharing your experience in foster care? How did you stay so strong?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. Yeah, there have been people who have told me, why do you keep talking about this? You need to get rid of that foster care label. Um, I have always known I was going to be on stage talking to people. And it's really weird, right? Because when I was younger, I would tell people, I'm going to be an actress, right? And that was just the word that was available to me. But it was just more like I knew I was going to be on stage talking to people. I knew that I was going to do that for a living. So that was a vision that I had as a child. I knew, even then, I knew what I was called to do. I mean, I've even have gone as far as to tell people I was born to do this. So it's a calling. And that has allowed me to keep going, right? Because I've called up people and say, I'd love to speak at your event. And they go, no, thank you. You're not a big enough celebrity for us. I mean, so people are gonna just say no. And I knew that and I expected that, especially after looking at other people, who kind of work in similar industries where you are gonna get a lot of pushback, right? And especially being a woman and a dark-skinned Black woman, people aren't gonna want to sometimes see that. They don't want to hear the bad things, or they don't want to see you because they don't think it should be you who should be up there. So, I mean, you just have to have a thick skin, and I know that what I do, I'm helping other people. I know that what I went through, I didn't go through for nothing. And I knew that I had the skill set to share my story. Some people are so traumatized, they can't even talk about what they went through, right? They don't even go to places where they used to go to. They avoid people. So I felt as though it was something that I wanted to do. I felt like I needed to do, and something that I was good at.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna play this video. It's called the Black Doll, White Doll Experiment. And this is really important. And I think we touched a little bit on it. Children as young as 3 and 5, they know they are different. They can see that they're Black. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that, because I think people go, well, kids can't see color, we're all the same, when in fact that they do. And it's really important to realize that so that you can help them with their development as they get older, because it's really important to include that ethnic formation piece, excuse me, as far as their identity as they grow up, so that they know who they are. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video, and then I'll ask for responses right afterwards.
In Brown versus Board of Education, the famous case that desegregated schools in the 1950s, Dr. Kenneth Clark conducted a doll test with Black children. He asked them to choose between a Black doll and a white doll. In most instances, the majority of the children preferred the white doll. I decided to reconduct this test as Dr. Clark did to see how we've progressed since then. Can you show me the doll that you like best or that you'd like to play with?
This one. I like that one.
Okay.
This one.
That one?
This one. I like to play with this.
And can you show me the doll that is the nice doll? And why is that the nice doll?
He's white.
And can you show me the doll that looks bad? Okay. And can you and why does that look bad?
Because it's black.
And why do you think that's a nice doll?
Because she's white.
And can you give me the doll that looks like you? "15 out of the 21 children preferred the white doll.
You're muted there, Jamerika, you're muted. There
I'd
you
like to know what everyone's responses were to watching that. If you can just write that in the chat, that would be great. What your responses were to watching that.
Just so you know, a lot of us did see it in the previous presentation. They did show that.
Oh, okay then. Well,
It hurts my heart is the first reaction I got there. Interesting how she hesitated. Have seen it, it's sad. A lot of sadness. Yeah, and that's the general. Oh wait, as a Black woman, that makes me very sad. Makes me very sad. Yeah.
Segregated schools in the 1950s. Dr. Kenneth
anyone else say anything?
That's it. Well, we discussed how we wondered how it would be. Oh, if the presenter was Black, the questioner, I guess. It proves that young children have opinions about race at a very young age, which is obviously one of the points you were making. Indeed, you know, it was very powerful.
Yeah, I never get used to seeing that. You know, and I think, oh, did one more come through, Chester?
Yes, it's sad. However, this is how it was back in the 50s and sometime today.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, kids are just like us. They see those messages and they internalize them.
And then someone asked, did you know if the facilitator was white or Black? I mean, from the voice, you can tell.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah. That's it. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I never, you know, get used to seeing that video. And like I said, I think it really shows that children are just like us, you know, they take in what they see and they internalize it. And so, you know, one thing I want to be able to ask everyone is, where do y'all feel stereotypes come from, whether positive or negative? And I did see one more comment come through.
Yeah. Pat mentioned that Kenneth and Mamie Clark, the scientists were Black. I mean, the social scientists were Black who came up with it. What if the doll was of different shades of dark, different shades of Black? I'm sorry. You mentioned that being of dark skin was also a factor. So that could have been interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Colorism is very real. And for some of y'all who may not know what colorism is, it talks about how people with different skin tones can be seen as more favorable or not. And it's not something exclusive to Black people, but just people who are dark skinned or lighter skinned. And it's really real. I was reading an article about some women in Jamaica who feel the need to lighten their skin so that they can get employment or they can appear more attractive to men. And it's been something that's been around for ages. I think here in the United States, you know, Black, darker skinned was considered to be more negative. It even goes back to the times of slavery, where the darker skinned slaves would work outside in the fields and the lighter skinned slaves would work inside the house because they were seen as being more acceptable because they were lighter skinned, closer to white. Yeah. So yeah, those things are still very prevalent. I'm against colorism. I speak about it publicly. How, you know, how intelligent or beautiful you are has nothing to do with your skin tone. And obviously, it's more complicated than that. But the end of the story is that we have to teach our kids that light skin and dark skin, that it's not okay to think one is better than the other. I had a friend whose 4-year-old son who came home crying because the kids were calling him dark skin. And I'm like, that's messed up. That's not your name. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so we have to be aware of that.
Yeah. There was an observation that we have more positive role models today. So hopefully things are getting better, and that colorism started back from slavery. There was another observation that shows that as caregivers, we have a lot of work to do and should start teaching the children who they are at an earlier age. And it also happens in the Hispanic cultures as well.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, and it's something we have to teach all of our kids, you know, not just our Black kids, but our white kids, Hispanic, Asian, whoever, you know, that just because someone has a certain skin color or different features than us doesn't mean they're bad or good. It just is what it is, you know. If God wanted us to all look the same, that's what he would have done, but that's obviously not the case. So, you know, we have to teach our kids that. Yeah. I'd love to know, where do y'all think stereotypes come from? You know, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a couple of people want to say something.
Media came up, home and society came up.
Okay, yep.
I agree with both of those. Passed down through
Passed down.
families. I agree with
Families, yep.
Yep.
Community,
community. Yep.
yeah. Even positive stereotypes, right? You know, like people go, oh, well, Black people can dance, right? You know, that's probably not true. And like, and what does that even mean? They can dance. You know what I mean? Rhythm is so subjective.
Yep.
But like even a positive stereotype can put pressure on someone to act a certain way.
Mhm.
How might stereotypes affect the way we communicate and work with others?
Early education in school was another one that came up. Generations of misinformation. Yeah. And if we're operating from strictly from stereotype, then we're obviously not, valuing what this person is bringing, their own talents to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Someone else pointed that that's with all races.
What was that last part, Chester?
That's with all races.
Yeah.
I guess that whole stereotype kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and in spite of stereotypes, how can we effectively work with people who are different than us? What do y'all think? How do we work with people who are different than us? We do this every day, but how do we do it effectively?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
It is that.
Yeah. Thanks for being honest. I appreciate that.
Learning every day. Learn a little bit every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And I appreciate the person who said that it's hard, because even though it is hard, nothing comes easy, right? We just have to do the work,
Yep.
And I think the benefit is you have a strong team, you have clients who are thriving, but you have to do the work up front. Yeah.
Some of the suggestions are we can acknowledge differences, ask appropriate questions, keep addressing it every day, listen and learn, being here. Yep.
All right, cool. Awesome. Thank y'all. All right. So as far as fulfilling needs, when we are building those relationships and spending time together and we're offering those affirmations and acceptance, right, that really builds up that emotional foundation in that young person to go, I feel good about myself. Even when I fall short, I know that I'm a good person and I'm doing my best, right? Cultural, like that hair care piece is so important, because it's not just identity, but it's also a matter of healthcare, right? So making sure that folks have access to, credible hair care, cooking meals, history and traditions. When my husband and I got married, for our engagement shoot, I wore an African head wrap. And what that symbolizes is, a transition from being a single woman to a married woman. And during our wedding ceremony, he wore a Kofi hat, which is an African style hat. And I actually have a photo that I'll show you all of that. And he had on a regalia that he was holding. It was like a robe. And so it's just those things are fun, and they really connect you to your culture. It allows you to celebrate it and really just show it to the world and just feel like I belong in the world as I am. And then that social piece, I touched a lot on that, with that identity formation piece. It does include addressing that child's ethnicity, right? It's not, oh, I'm just going to use myself as an example. Oh, Jamerika, and she happens to be Black. No, Jamerika is a Black woman, and we love her anyway. You know what I'm saying? So that's really important to have that. A sense of belonging, right? One thing that I really admired that my 5th grade teacher did, and she also watched my wedding live stream, is I experienced racist bullying as a child, and her and the rest of the staff at the school stepped in. They brought in a speaker to talk about diversity. They told the kids that was not okay, and they would get in trouble, meaning they would be written up. And then also too, for Black History Month, we made paper mache baskets that were African American themed. And so that really just helped me to belong, especially with being in a new foster home and an all white community. They really stepped that up. And I still carry that with me, that wherever I go, yes, I do belong, and so that felt really good. And then just, having that social identity intact allows us to go out and achieve, create community, and just, bring awareness to the things that need to have attention brought to them. And that's why I do the public speaking that I do. And so working together, I always just like to leave these tidbits, when people feel heard, I feel they truly heal. That's really the start to being able to transform their life, you know. And with this work, it can be tiring and it's really easy to get in a pattern. But sometimes, you know, you may feel like there are barriers in place, right, that are stopping you. And you have to pause and ask yourself, is it a lack of education? Do I not have support from my supervisor or other person that should be supporting me, right? Also, too, do you not have enough energy? Like, I'm just so tired, right? And I just can only do bare minimum programming. So that's where self-care comes into play, where you have to rest, you know, use your PTO. If you have a babysitter or if you're able to do respite care, it's okay to use those resources, and you should, you know, because burnout is real. It happens. I've burnt out from doing direct service work, and I had to take a break. And so, you know, we're here for however long we're here on this earth, and it's important that we take rest. You know, we're deserving of that. And then celebrating successes, no matter how small they are. You know, you may be working with youth or families and it just seems nothing's going to ever let up. But when I think about my own situation where I did have developmental delays, I didn't speak till I was 4, and now I've been a news reporter on TV. You know, it's just that day in and day out work, right? And when I was younger, I was able to find a therapist that helped me and talked me through my issues. And so, you know, I think about those successes along the way, and not just today, because I know that what has allowed me not just to get here, but has helped me to thrive and get better. And so I just want to say thank you for making a difference and for being here this morning, especially on a Saturday morning. And, you know, you just have to keep at it, you know, and you know, as I said, one of my biggest life dreams, and I don't think I said this earlier, was to get married. And like I said, working with my therapist and being able to share my life dreams with her, which I hadn't really done with anyone, was really paramount, because she was able to show me and on how to, you know, realize who I was, what I brought to the table, but also too to show me how valuable and lovable that I am, and that I don't have to do anything else to get people's love other than be myself. And that was really paramount and in the dating process for me, which eventually led me to meeting my husband. So the work that y'all do is important, and never underestimate that. And so we have a few minutes left, so I'd love for y'all to ask any questions if you feel, you know, like you want to ask them.
We had a couple of good, beautiful pictures. Thank you for your workshop. Great picture of your wedding day. Beautiful couple, indeed. You know, I think it's so incredible. Everything that you brought in the time that you were with us is like just the message so many of the girls, especially Black girls, need to hear from survivors of foster care. You know, it's amazing to me, and I don't know you other than our interaction here. It's amazing to me that I have no idea what your struggle was, but I'm sure it was immense just based on the circumstance. But you never know that unless you told us from your presentation. I mean, you know, incredible, the things you've achieved. And you know, I mean, I hate to say you're so well spoken, you know, it's ridiculous, but I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, this is what so many of our children need to see, is that, you know, you know, it doesn't have to be the Superman thing or the Superwoman thing.
Mhm.
Just, you know, people need to hear you. People need to reach out to you at cleverjam.com and get you in, really. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
it was so moving. It really was for me.
Thank you. Hey, Pat, how you doing?
Doing good.
Is
Thank
there
you.
a book coming? Is there a book out there? Because there needs to be a book if there isn't one.
I'm writing one right now, one step at a time, but that is in the works. Thank you.
Any tips for helping girls in foster care find mentors and role models?
Oh, that's one of the questions?
Yes.
Yes. It really varies, but I would try to see if there's any organizations in your area that have any formal mentorship programs. You can check with your local Department of Children and Families. Here in Washington, it's called DCYF. Again, check in with any, like, I know there's the National Social Workers Association, as well as the Black Social Workers Association. Just checking those groups and asking around. I have found those kinds of groups are very hyper local. And like I said, I'm not on the East Coast, but if you start asking around, I'm pretty sure you can find something. I know there's groups like Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I don't know specifically if they work with foster youth, and you may come across. Um, Yeah, so I would check that out. I would even check out with the CASA program, see if they know of any programs that do mentorship. They're more advocacy based than mentorship, but I'm pretty sure they know something. Any other questions that come up, Chester?
Another tip for, thanks for sharing your life story. It means so much. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. What you said you're writing a book coming up?
Yes.
Is it just a memoir, or is it about adventure, or what
Yeah, it's going to be a memoir, and it's going to focus on the time period when I turned 18 and just left everything child welfare behind me. And it's going to talk about what it was like for me to be on my own during that time, you know, young women in society, and what it was like, you know, working, trying to go to school and realize my dream of going to Washington State University.
Wow.
You know, that was something I always wanted to do when I was 14, and I had to do it by myself. So
Wow.
I'm gonna write about
I have another question here. Our biracial little girls have been watching you with me, and they are so delighted to see you and the pictures you shared. We have been talking about how they feel when they go to church, the zoo, the store. Great opening for conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%. Definitely. A very positive, you know, very positive, very powerful performance. And I thank you. I thank you all for coming out. Any other questions? We still got a couple minutes. Don't be shy.
No, I think wait, wrong one. I wanted to just say, I think it's important that with all the work that we're doing and learning from the conference and from everyone talking and over the year of going through so much, that we see you now. We
Yeah.
see you.
Yeah.
You're showing a positivity to something, but we now realize there's stuff underneath, but you can still be a mentor. You can still be strong. You can still be a mentor for others. I appreciate you sharing all your positive story.
Thank you. Thank you, Shaman.
Yep.